Hello, this is Jürgen Rasmussen speaking. Welcome to the Provocative Hypnosis vlog. This particular vlog is an attempt at a clarification. I recently made a post on a Three Principles forum where I made the claim that I think that the inside-out model of reality is deeply flawed. And quite a few people were confused by this and asked me to explain better or to clarify my position. So this is my best attempt at doing so. Now, here's the point I was attempting to make. Everything that we experience, at the level of experience, at the level of direct experience, everything that we experience just emerges in consciousness. It's all taking place in consciousness. What we call the world just emerges in consciousness moment by moment. So what we think of as the outside world, for example, right now I can look at a computer screen, I can touch a table, I can look at a fireplace. The things that we think of as the external world is as much inside as what we think of as the internal world of body sensations and emotions and cognitions. At the level of experience, there really is no distinction because it's all taking place in the exact same space of consciousness. So even when you're in the world per se, in some activity, engaged in doing something, you're still, by all intents and purposes, in your mind. Meaning that everything that's emerging moment to moment is still taking place in consciousness. So at the level of experience and at the level of consciousness, there really is no distinction between inside or outside. So it would really make no sense to say that our experience of the world is generated from the outside in or from the inside out. Now, let's take a little detour, a little step back, and take a look at naive realism. The way most people seem to more or less view the world. Most people that I meet seem to operate from the premise that there is a outside world out there that they can directly perceive, touch, smell, hear, and that outside world of events and people is directly affecting them and creating their emotional states. Now, this gives rise to victimhood and blaming and a very disempowered life if you fully buy into it. Now, if you look at the schools of psychotherapy and coaching that really have a tendency to help people, whether you look at neurolinguistic programming, the way it's presented by the competent folks, if you look at Albert Ellis's rational emotive behavior therapy, if you look at William Glasser's choice theory, if you look at CBT, mindfulness, stress-based reduction, these models tip the scales in a other direction, meaning that they still, for the most part, more or less accept the idea that there is some outside event that is outside of you that you're taking in. This is A. And then you have your belief systems and your expectations and your interpretations that also matter a lot, or sometimes even more than the so-called event. And it's the combination of A, the activating event, and B, your beliefs and interpretations that kind of create your experience. Now, the more people have a tendency to emphasize B, the beliefs and the interpretations and the expectations and so on and so forth, as the main factors, the better off they have a tendency to be. The better their outcomes, the better their experience. So this is a radical improvement, but it's still based upon an idea that I'm in here You know, I'm the thinker, I'm the subject of my experience, and that there's a world out there that's kind of affecting me, but I can kind of modify beliefs about what it means. Now, the three principles world will label these various schools of psychotherapy as enlightened outside in. And many of these teachers keep the same dualistic model and then say, no, it's completely inside out. Your experience is completely created from thought internally and then projected out. The system only works one way. And many of the same people say you have free will. You've been given the gift of thought to create any reality that you want. You are the creator of your experience. And this is the illusory part. This is the elephant in the room that doesn't quite stand up to scrutiny. So, because the reality is, it's all happening in consciousness. And the sense of being the subject, the sense of being the thinker of thoughts, the sense of being this I that chooses, that creates the experience of reality is completely illusory. It's the result of not really noticing thoughts as they appear in consciousness. If we don't quite notice thoughts as they appear in consciousness, it gives rise to the illusion that we are the thinker of thoughts, that we are the I that chooses, and that we are the subject, and that this subject somehow has free will and the power to create. So I become master of the universe in that sense. But this I, this I really is the result of not really paying attention. The neuroscientist and philosopher Sam Harris said something that I think is quite profound. He said that the illusion of free will is in and of itself an illusion, meaning that the subjective feeling of being the subject, the subjective feeling of being the decider or chooser or thinker of thoughts, that subjective experience is not really there. It's illusory in the sense that it seems to be there as a result of us not really having paid attention to what it's like to be us moment by moment. If you sit down and you really pay attention to your own experience moment by moment, you'll realize that there is no thinker of thoughts. There is no one there in that sense to have free will. There's just one thought, and the next thought, and the next thought. So as an example, one reason why there is no free will is because there is no one there to have the free will. Now some people will say, well, this completely depends on how you define free will. I am the universe, or I am everything, and I am free. But if you speak to people, you'll notice that what they mean by free will is that subjective feeling of being the subject, the subjective feeling of being the thinker and being in control. And that is completely illusory. And the I that takes pride in an accomplishment or is shameful about a bad performance or unethical act, that says, I'm really proud of the way I performed yesterday, or I'm really shameful of how I treated my mother last week. That I is just another thought. It wasn't present during the performance last week. It wasn't present during the encounter with your mother last week. It had absolutely nothing to do with it. It's like the clown that takes center stage, after the theater show and bows and somehow takes the credit. But it was never there during the show. So this is what I'm pointing to. And if you see through that duality, it makes no sense to talk about inside and outside at the level of experience. I'm not talking about cosmology. I'm not talking about physics. I'm talking about purely at the level of experience. Now, I'll read a quote for you, and humor me a little bit. Have a little bit of patience. This is from the book The Brain by David Eagleman. And it says, how does the wetware of the brain give rise to our experience? The sight of emerald green, the taste of cinnamon, the smell of wet soil. What if I told you that the world around you with its rich colors, textures, sounds, and scents is an illusion? A show put on for you by your brain. If you could perceive reality as it really is, you would be shocked by its colorless, odorless, tasteless silence. Outside your brain, there is just energy and matter. Over millions of years of evolution, the human brain has become adept at turning this energy and matter into a rich sensory experience of being in the world. It's quite fascinating when you think about it. If you accept that, then the old model of ABC that they use in cognitive behavioral therapy and rational emotive behavior therapy might be a very useful one, especially for some clients in helping them change. But it's a map that doesn't quite make sense because your brain really has no direct access to the world. It seems as if we touch with our fingers and that we see with our eyes and that we hear with our ears and that we smell with our noses. But these sensory organs are really just interpreters of information. I'll give you another quick quote here. Your sensory organs, your eyes, ears, nose, mouth, and skin act as interpreters. They detect a motley crew of information sources, including photons, air compression, waves, molecular concentrations, pressure, texture, temperature, and translate them into the common currency of the brain, electrochemical signals. Now, we don't, of course, experience a brain. We experience body sensations, emotions, moods, cognitions, essentially a thought-generated reality, so to speak, in consciousness. So does this mean that we're all one? Well, I don't think so. Well, at the level of experience, it's all one, in that it's taking place in the same space of consciousness. But I think that you should be really, really slow to begin to make claims about cosmology and saying that we are all one. That is quite something else. I just posted this piece by God Sod, who's a psychologist who stands up for freedom of speech, and someone commented that the notion of freedom of speech, that you should be able to say whatever you want, is deplorable. It's a sign of the illusion of separation. And I think this is nonsense. I think you still need individual rights. You still need to treat individuals and individuals. You still need property rights. You should still have all of those things to be able to have a free society. So it is true that at the level of consciousness, it's all one, but that does not translate as one mind of the universe, or that we're all somehow the same being. I think when people think that way and turn those philosophies into political realities, the results can often be quite tragic. So I hope this was at least somewhat clarifying. If you have any comments around it, feel free to post them where you find it on social media. If this sparks some curiosity, you can check out more about my work at the Provocative Hypnosis YouTube channel or go to provocativehypnosis.com. Thanks.